Okay, washing your hands is very important for hygiene, but what would you do if the curvy girl from school suddenly appeared in the men's bathroom, cornered you and said, "I came to give you a good flute playing. How the hell did we get into this situation?" Well, let's rewind a bit. Our protagonist, Buntaru, is a pretty responsible student who has many tasks to complete. As soon as he finishes school, he runs off to work, where he's clearly very much in demand. Whether it's helping with school assignments or just taking orders, cleaning, and delivering food all at the same time. After work, he meets up with a friend who's handing out flyers for his upcoming concert. The protagonist takes one and promises to attend with his friends so as not to let him down. At that moment, he feels like someone is watching him closely. He looks up and notices this beautiful curvy girl staring at him like she wants to devour his soul. Suddenly, as a car passes by, she disappears. This leaves him quite confused because that girl was Kuroda, a classmate from the same section. Later, at home, his best friends show up. Yuka, the energetic actress who recently performed in a play he wrote, and Atumu, the chill guy in the class who's usually busy flirting with waifus and going on dates looking for true love. They hang out like good friends, have some beers, eat chips, and talk about their future life plans, because the school is asking them to fill out a form about what they want to do once they graduate. It was easy for Yuka to decide, but for these two, things were complicated, especially for Buntaru, because even though he's good at many things, he doesn't know what to do with his life. So, during class, he notices the president and Akina arguing over some paperwork that needs to be sorted out. The protagonist, being a good guy, approaches and interrupts the argument in a friendly manner, agreeing to help with the paperwork. He has such an incredible level of communication that just by talking, he gets everyone in the classroom to gather and help with the paperwork they needed to do. It's then that he goes to the bathroom and Kuroda corners him. She practically invites him out for the weekend after classes. The reason for the date is a big mystery, as the girl never hinted that she wanted to dance the Macarena. So, with the support of his friends, who also went undercover to spy, the protagonist arrives at the agreed location. The date begins and he takes Kuroda to places he thinks are perfect. At all times, the girl is surprised and confirms that what she thought would happen is happening. At the end of the date, the waifu asks him what the heck he wants to do with his life in the future. When he doesn't answer, she makes him a proposal where both would make a lot of money. She takes him to a video game store and shows him how good games cost a lot of money, while others in the same category are dirt cheap. With that example, she makes him see that only a good writer can create a fantastic story that the world will love. This is where he comes in as the scriptwriter for her project to create the best Bishoujo video game in the world. HEY. If you want to know the name of this anime, it will appear somewhere down here during the video, so leave in the comments the exact minute it appears, and I'll give you a powerful heart. A little big detail is that Bunta has no clue what Bishoujo games are about, so he spends the whole night trying to learn about that world. By the time he arrives at the school like a zombie, he finds a beautifully decorated letter from Kuroda. His friends think it's a love letter, but when he opens the package that came with it, a bunch of games spill out onto the floor, leaving his friends surprised. It's a load of... That same afternoon, Kuroda takes him to the supposed marketing club, which is a front because it will actually be the game club. She got permission to use it personally due to having the best grades in all subjects, winning contests, and many other achievements. Inside, there are several seats and work areas. The protagonist is obviously the scriptwriter, and she is the producer, but they still need a designer, a programmer, a voice actor, and many others. She gives him the task of finding the right people because she isn't very sociable herself. However, she does tell him that they need to be capable of achieving their goal. She also mentions that her older brother is a game designer and has created several powerful titles that are at the top of the charts. Knowing this, Bunta decides to look for the best people for the roles. Obviously, he turns to the nerds at the school, guys who look like the devil is about to take them. Supposedly, they are the pros, but Kuroda immediately rejects them because she knows they have no idea what it takes to create a game. Bunta feels bad for bringing those intruders, but once they get rid of them, his friends arrive. Upon meeting Yuka, she offers to be the voice actress. Even though she isn't interested in games, she loves voice acting, which would be a great opportunity for her as an actress in the future. However, his friend Adamu has no talent. He wants to be with them because he has no club and no goal in life. Kuroda mentions that if he isn't clear about what to do with his miserable life, working as an assistant is a great responsibility since any mistake he makes could jeopardize the project. The best thing for him would be to search for love. That word causes Adamu to change. He goes crazy and starts saying all sorts of nonsense about women, claiming that 2D is the best and that he has no hope of being with a curvy 3D waifu. Yes, folks, the guy was rejected and now he's become that. However, Kuroda likes his potential and accepts him as an assistant. The four of them go on a trip to learn more about anime, illustrations, and other things, but since it's Bunta's first time in a place full of anime characters, he decides to stay to visit a maid cafe where he meets Andu, the school president. In her free time, she's a super hot maid, but she threatens the protagonist by whispering in his ear that if he reveals her secret, he can say goodbye to his nutria. So when he returns home, he wonders how they will find a designer. While at a manga bookstore, he finds an epic drawing that was left on one of the shelves. After researching in forums, he gets valuable information. The person who draws like that is Yuki, a first-year student at his school who is very shy about talking. Since they can't figure out how to communicate with her, Andu comes over and asks what's up with the protagonist. The guy tells her the situation, and she gets excited because she's a huge fan of Yuki's drawings. So she manages to convince her and even includes herself in the club as the programmer. This makes Kuroda excited, and finally, the group is complete to start the project. Like any project group, they needed inspiration to create their story. So Tio get ideas. They decided to go on a trip to a house that was pretty wrecked. Everyone showed up except Andu, who had an issue at work and was attending an anime convention. While they were there, they started cleaning, meditating, and tearing leaves, or at least that's what the protagonist and Kuroda were doing, as the others were messing around instead of working. By the end of the afternoon, they were exhausted from fatigue. Kuroda, however, was as fresh as a daisy, so everyone was supposedly at a good level of concentration. She handed a laptop to the protagonist and another to Adamu to record the meeting. As she talked, everyone began to fall asleep until she mentioned the Master Up. Well, it means a game has finally been developed, so they needed to have clear ideas about what the story would be, which is why they were there. This way, they would never reach the Master Down, which is when a game fails and is never released. As hunger set in, they decided to make curry, but there was noticeable tension in the air. These two were in a bad mood, and on top of that, the red-haired girl arrived super late, causing the two to argue because the waifu arrived talking about the yaoi manga she had bought and the love between guys. Buta, being the screenwriter, wanted to know what the hell to put in a fiction work or what theme it could cover. Yuka suggested they could do something related to romance, but when she said it, she seemed quite nervous and blushing, acting this way with him for the first time. But the next morning, problems arose. The red-haired girl wasn't entirely happy with what Kuroda wanted to do since she wanted to finish the game by November of the same year, which is quite impossible if you want to create a game worth thousands of yen. The production and creation would be quite tedious for simple students, but Kuroda wasn't stupid. Like a smart Chinese woman, she decided the best thing to do was to make a low-profile game, one that was quite economical, short but with high-level design, story, and character development, as if it were an SS game. This way, they would get many sales, and in less than a month they could generate over 10 million yen. That is, counting on the support of sponsors. With the money they raised, they could then make a longer and more expensive game. The problem was that the red-haired girl wanted to make a game and have fun in the process, which ended up annoying Kuroda, as fun would be a distraction from the main goal. This caused the red-haired girl to leave the team and tell everyone to go to hell. Uta made Kuroda see that she was wrong. Without Andu, none of those present could have given ideas or talked about it, as she was the life of the party, so to speak. Somehow, the protagonist managed to convince her to talk to Kuroda, and in that attempt to decide what the hell they would do, and to realize the script had clear Yuri moments which she loved and which pissed off the protagonist, but also that's when the waifu decided to join the project because she liked the work they were doing and knew she would have fun in the process. With their ideas clear, the first step was to write the script. The protagonist gets to work, but he only manages to write 5 lines. Kuroda looks at him like she wants to strangle him, but with everyone's encouragement, he is motivated to continue writing. During a brainstorming session, the protagonist goes into pro mode and completes a 13-episode script in less than 3 days. Everyone reacts positively and gives him good compliments, but it still doesn't feel right to him. The redhead tells him everything is fine, but suggests that the characters should be more striking. This catches his attention because he also felt something was off, and none of them wanted to tell him what was wrong. Inspired, the protagonist spurred Yuki to create amazing character sketches for the story. Everyone loved the sketches, making the little artist blush. That same day, the protagonist was deep in thought. With so many responsibilities, he decided to leave his main job to focus entirely on the script. His boss advised him to focus on what he wanted to achieve, and if he put his mind to it, he could accomplish anything. Noticing the protagonist was distracted and creatively blocked, Kuroda introduced him to another famous writer. This guy revealed the big secret of writing. Write what you feel and think at that moment, without filters. Just be yourself and let emotions guide you. This revelation showed the protagonist the enormous potential of his work, but what motivated him the most was the writer's striking charisma. That's what his story was missing, characters with unique charisma that set them apart. After spending sleepless nights writing, he improved his script to another level, achieving the reaction he had long desired from everyone. Each team member continued working in their area. The protagonist kept sending new chapters for the assistant to organize, while Yuka read manga to understand the characters. Then Yuki Yuki got up and showed all the sketches she had made. The strange thing was that there were so many sketches, and they realized that several were done at her home. It was evident she was very tired since she was only sleeping 2 hours a day. Wanting to give her best for the team, she had been pushing herself to the point where exhaustion consumed her, preventing her from drawing. She didn't want to delay the project because of her, but in the end, they were delayed because she couldn't draw well. Kuroda and the protagonist decided to shorten the story and remove some unnecessary details to make it easier for her to draw. She refused to let them make changes for her sake, but in the end, it was something that benefited not only her but the entire team. If they continued working this way, there would come a point where they would be too exhausted to continue. So with everything decided, Yuki recovered and returned to illustrating. It was then that they heard Kuroda humming a beautiful melody. They recorded the music and proposed using it in the video game. Days passed and summer vacation had arrived. The protagonist continued writing scripts, though he occasionally experienced brief writer's blocks. However, he always found his way back on track. The problem arose when Andu released the game beta. A few days ago, they received the music and backgrounds for the game and everything was ready. They just needed to program a base to see how it was coming together. That's where Andu worked her magic. But while they were reviewing the game, the protagonist noticed something was off. The dialogues were different and some aspects didn't align. The only person who could have modified that was the programmer. Kuroda asked Andu why she was making changes without permission. Andu's excuse was that several dialogues had grammatical errors and lines that didn't match the storyline, which was quite illogical since she had previously read the script. This sparked tension within the group, as the screenwriter should be the only one to change the lines unless permission was granted to another. After getting scolded, the waifu was noticeably disheartened and started reprogramming everything herself. When it was time to leave, Yuki told the protagonist that her drawings had been altered. Andu had taken the liberty to change the expressions of the waifus, which infuriated Kuroda. Andu was making the visual novel to her liking, disregarding what others had to say and the time everyone had dedicated to their work. This raised the question of what had happened with the webpage she had promised to create. Andu revealed that she hadn't made any progress and that they were over 2 weeks behind schedule. The fury from Kuroda was palpable, leading to another argument where the waifu once again left the team. The protagonist affirmed that Kuroda had every right to be upset since the waifu was acting like a child who only wanted to satisfy her needs. But on the other hand, they needed her on the team. She was the only one who knew how to program and understood those games. They tried to talk to her at home but couldn't find her. Knowing her family had a fishing center, the protagonist looked up their business page, where they always sought help from young people for fishing. He signed up and showed up in the middle of the night to help. Fishing became quite challenging due to the storm, but a good plot twist saved the protagonist from a huge wave that hit the boat. Fortunately, they managed to catch a large number of fish. Upon returning to the port, he sincerely told her that he wanted to finish the game by her side because she was the best in her area, and they needed her support no matter what. Everyone was on an uncertain path, so any obstacle could stand in their way, but as a team, they would have to learn to overcome whatever came their way. In this way, he convinced the redhead, leaving her blushing, and the waifu returned, full of energy, ready to program again. And here comes the fanservice moment. That's literally the name of the chapter. So, the waifus and the guys go for a chill day at the beach with beers, barbecue, and all that, with the idea of taking reference photos that could help them with their visual novel. The redhead puts on a temporary tattoo and strikes some pretty suggestive poses. They mess around in the water, and then they start playing volleyball, where Kuroda is quite bad at games. The protagonist's buddy gets mad because he sees a couple and tries to hit them with the ball, and thus the fun goes on throughout the day. By the time evening comes, everyone goes to the rooms where the hot springs bath is. Kuroda knows this moment is key to creating the classic bath event with the guys, but before anything happens, she visits the protagonist in his room to ask him to include spicy moments in the script, such as what color or bikini he prefers. Once she makes her request, she goes for her nice bath, where she initially tries to talk about Apaze casually, but she didn't expect these two women to be so wild, to the point that they almost do some naughty things. After a moment of strange noises and screams, night falls and everyone gathers to use the fireworks, which turns out really marvelous. And it takes the opportunity to apologize for all the bad things she's done. Kuroda says that the apologies will be accepted as long as they finish the game together because it's something they started together, and now she wants the two of them to achieve that wonderful goal. Here's where I'll tell you something. Everything was nice, but the little problem that's going to arise is with the protagonist's friend, Yuka. This girl, from very early on when they were playing volleyball, has been a bit jealous and watching the protagonist. When Kuroda got hit in the face with the ball, he took care of her. Then, when they were eating, Kuroda freaked out because she swallowed some seeds, which reminded her of childhood when the protagonist acted the same way Kuroda did when she ate seeds. The thing is, while While she was remembering that with Buta, she decided to have fun in the sea, trying to get him to play with her. Suddenly, the girl with the nice but shows up with the protagonist's laptop, which he had left lying around and forgotten about. They talk about the naughty promise that was going to be in the script, but Yuka misunderstood things, thinking they had a secret romantic relationship or something, which caused her to kick the protagonist and run away. From that day, when they return home, obviously on the train, these two argue about the novel's silly stuff. But what they hadn't realized was that the bigger problem was going to be the jealousy and confusing feelings Yuka was starting to develop for the protagonist. Weeks go by and, as usual, they find themselves behind schedule again. This time, it's because of the protagonist's script, specifically the scene where the protagonist has to confess to his waifu. The problem is, he has no idea how to write a scene that feels so real that fans might even cry when they see it. The girls tell him that the best thing he can do is to try to act out what happens in the scene with a girl. The problem is, the guy has never had a real date, and obviously, none of the girls want to go out with him, so the protagonist tries to gather information. He calls a buddy who accidentally broke up with his girlfriend that day. He meets with the teacher, who gets weird and corners the protagonist, only for us to find out that the guy likes playing the flute. But anyway, he goes back to his old job hoping to get some info, but by the end of the day, he gets nothing. In desperation, he calls the scriptwriter he met through Kuroda. This chubby guy tells him he needs to capture the perfect love he desires, basically to imagine what his perfect life would be like with the girl he wants and how he would confess his love. He does this, but in a rather horrifying way. Seeing how badly the protagonist writes these scenes, Kuroda proposes they act out the characters. That way, he can gather information from each girl, which might help him write. First, he goes out with Kuroda, where they act out the moment Kuroda's character gets shot by the enemy. Then Yuka enters, playing the hero to save the protagonist, and they both declare their love. Despite Yuka doing a good job, the guy is blank. When it's Andu's turn, things get steamy in the bath until the guy feels a huge rod touching his back, and then the redhead says, "I have a weapon of great caliber." Excuse me, what? After that very awkward moment, that same afternoon, he notices that Yuka is still upset. To address the issue, he invites her to his place to talk about it. She agrees, and on the rooftop, he apologizes for being so focused on the script and neglecting her. At that moment, he comes up with the great idea of having a real date with her, thinking that way he could get good info and be inspired to write better. She obviously accepts his invitation. They eat ice cream and have a great time, although for him, it's just an inspiration outing. While she's having a phenomenal time, at some point during the date, she tells him that she likes him a lot, but out of fear of being rejected, she says she likes him as a friend. With her help and the fun they had, the protagonist feels more inspired and confident to write. However, he gets so tired when he gets home that he falls asleep immediately. In the middle of the night, he receives a call from Kuroda telling him he'll be imprisoned for being a fool. A helicopter can be heard approaching. Buta tries to escape, but as he reaches the door, he notices it slowly opening. To his fear, half of Kuroda's face peeks in. The waifu informs him that he'll be spending the last 3 days locked up, but not alone. He'll be locked in with all the waifus. This is because he needs to have the script ready in 3 days, but he'll be under strict surveillance. He won't be allowed to leave his room, and if he does manage to go to the bathroom, he won't even get a bottle. While he's writing, he considers the idea of escaping through the window. But just as he's thinking of how to climb down, they all enter, putting newspapers, cardboard, and other stuff to make sure he doesn't FL it. Buta continues his writing attempt, but not knowing what the hell to do, he calls the other scriptwriter, who just gives him pathetic escape ideas. Then, without warning, Kuroda bursts in and snatches his phone. The internet was turned off, and he can only use his laptop and Word to write. The guy was practically screwed, tired, and out of ideas, so he decides to take a nap, but the nap lasts 5 hours. When he wakes up feeling like crap, they all enter scared and apologizing, because they had also fallen asleep. Faced with this event, they think the best plan would be Plan B, to help the protagonist relax more. For this, they all dress up as maids. Yes, his buddy does too, where this time they offer him maid service that isn't touched. The guy can receive caresses from all, but those hands can't move. Obviously, the one who gives him the best affection is Andioyu, who affectionately gives him a delicious massage with her pair of melons. Damn, where do I sign up for that service? The other girls bring him delicious food, while Kuroda scares him by saying how many minutes and seconds are left until the day ends, and tells him the exact size the file should be once he finishes IT. Unable to resist the confinement anymore, he goes crazy pounding on the door. Everyone enters and sees him very worried. Then Yuka interrupts and supports him, saying they should at least let him bathe. As a joke, they let him go to the bathroom, and they're almost not even there with him. So, after convincing Kuroda, the protagonist takes a refreshing bath, but he's so exhausted that he faints in the shower. Concerned about the blow he took, everyone is worried. Suddenly, Suddenly, the guy gets up out of nowhere, fully motivated, saying he won't disappoint them. He gets to work that night, and like Lightning McQueen, he manages to finish the script, despite being half asleep. Even though Kuroda checked that he finished, he didn't realize he got a huge kiss from the girl with the nice, but as a reward, the next day, the protagonist can leave his house to meet the girls on the rooftop, where he thanks them for all the support they gave him, swearing that from now on, he'll focus much more because tough moments will always come. With the script finalized and the illustrations done, there was only one important thing left to do: the recording. Kuroda, as a good producer, managed to secure a studio for the voice recording. Obviously, Yuka would be the protagonist of the video game, but once they arrived at the studio, she met the other voice actress, another girl who would voice a secondary character. Nerves were evident because it was the first time high school students were in such a professional environment. Normally, recordings take about an hour or less, depending on the speed and professionalism of the voice actress. The girl with pigtails first wanted to get to know the character she would be voicing. The protagonist explained it to her, and she made notes and marks on the script, which served as a guide for the tones she would use in each line, as well as the emotions she would convey throughout the script. All of this made Yuka even more nervous. Seeing how professional the voice actress was and how she finished her script in less than an hour caused Yuka to make many mistakes when she entered the recording booth. Frustrated, she threw the sheets, stood up to better dramatize the lines. But more than an hour passed, and she still wanted to keep redoing the recordings, despite the director, Kuroda, and Buta saying everything was fine. For her, it wasn't. During a brief break, she decided to change her clothes. There, Kuroda and Buta told her they were running out of time. They had to finish the recording that day because the studio had other recordings scheduled, and they wouldn't have another chance unless they were willing to pay extra. Yuka, feeling like everything was going wrong, was alone in her thoughts. Kuroda decided to stay with her to warn her that if they didn't finish the recording, they couldn't proceed with the project. Reluctantly, Yuka went back in and finished recording, no matter how it turned out. Buta praised her for her performance, but she left without saying anything. From that day on, Yuka quit the drama club and avoided their club meetings. She ignored them in class, and when Kuroda stopped her on the stairs to talk, she ignored him. It turns out what Kuroda had to tell her was important. One of the recordings had background noise, so the studio was giving them another chance to fix the problem. Upon hearing this, Buta went to find her and chased her to a park, where she cried and confessed she felt she hadn't given her best because she had promised to record in an extraordinary way. The protagonist encouraged her and reminded her that she was a great actress, despite her parents not supporting her acting dreams. Her two best friends always stood by her and encouraged her not to give up acting. Once convinced, they returned to the club, where Kuroda was glad to see her. He told them he had requested more time to deliver the demo the following week, so they could return to record again. This time, the recording turned out phenomenal. With the extra time they secured, they could also polish any errors in the game. Now, it was all up to Andu to program the demo on time. Finally, the day of the premiere arrived. The demo was launched, and views were soaring like the wind. There were positive comments, and everyone felt very flattered. However, Kuroda warned them not to get carried away by fame just yet. They needed to stay consistent for the full game to be a great success. At that moment, a rare game appeared, a visual novel released on the same day by Typhoon Company. This game was so good that it captivated everyone and left them impressed. The competition was tough, but no matter who they were up against, they wouldn't falter. Kuroda informed the protagonist that Typhoon's scriptwriter had expressed interest in meeting him. She arranged a meeting where the protagonist met Oji, a handsome guy who was very friendly. He spoke kindly to the protagonist and praised him for being a great scriptwriter at such a young age. However, when the protagonist introduced Buta, Oji rudely dismissed him, showing no interest in making friends with older folks. He wanted friends who were young and dedicated to the industry. Oji requested another meeting, this time with the entire team. After the protagonist shared what happened with Kuroda, she graciously accepted Oji's proposal. A few days later, they all gathered at a cafe. There, they met Oizo, a stunning representative of Typhoon. She was very friendly and started treating everyone well, but amidst the flattering words, she subtly began trying to poach them. First, she wanted to take Yuki to be an expert in lewd drawings, then the protagonist for his promising future as a writer, and so on with each member. This caused tension because none of the team members were willing to leave their friends. It was then that Oizo bluntly suggested why not everyone just join Typhoon, except for the voice actress and the assistant, who she deemed unnecessary. At this point, the protagonist got angry and publicly threw a glass of water at her. Humiliated, Oizo angrily proposed a competition they must participate in by obligation. It was simple. When both companies released their video games, they would compete to see who could sell more copies in a single day. The winner could take one member from the opposing team. If they lost, the protagonist would belong to Typhoon for the rest of his life. If they refused, she had the financial power to discredit the school, calling them all mediocre liars who attacked her in a cafe. Fearing the consequences, Kuroda reluctantly accepted her proposal and decided they would settle it on the premiere day. Everyone rallied behind the protagonist, and they worked like crazy to improve their video game. Kuroda went out shopping and brought back gifts for them. It was then that Kuroda's brother appeared. They welcomed him warmly since they knew he was also a game designer. However, they didn't expect the surprise he had. He unexpectedly thanked them for helping him with his debts. So it turns out that her brother's company was practically bankrupt with too many debts. He came up with the idea of closing the business, but his sister promised him she would find a way to get money. That's when the idea of creating the video game emerged. The catch was, she never told her friends about this. When she returns, she's pleasantly surprised to find out that everyone already knows the truth. She confirms that she used them to help her brother, but she also wants to make another video game where everyone could win. Obviously, the redhead gets angry because they were used for her benefit with no chance of earning any money. Each of them, upset, decides to leave, leaving poor Kuroda alone. Buta returns to his old job. The boss finds it strange because he had said he wanted to focus on one thing. All of this leaves the guys pensive because they loved the work they were doing and had the dream of achieving something for the first time. It was a clear goal they had, which now seemed unattainable. However, filled with remorse, they decide to return to the club to help Kuroda finish the game. Despite the deception she pulled, it was ultimately a team project where she supported them and gave them the opportunity to have a goal in life. Yuka got the chance to do what she loves. Yuki got to demonstrate her potential in art, and Buta, who has a great gift as a writer. Company Typhoon had finished the game with only 2 weeks left to deliver. They give it their all and manage to finish the work, but a problem arises on delivery day. For some strange reason, the images rendered in low quality. Redoing the work in high quality causes a significant delay. The last bullet train was leaving in the next 9 minutes. Kuroda rushes ahead while the others anxiously wait for the file to transfer. With minutes to spare, Buta and Yuka race against time. In the end, the protagonist manages to reach the train before it leaves, allowing them to deliver the video game on time. Now, they can finally rest and await the competition results. Big day arrives. Everyone arrives nervously, and Kuroda sadly informs them that Typhoon sold 6,000 copies. But it was really sad because they sold 9,000 copies, easily won the competition, as their product was of tremendous quality and priced very affordably. Because of this, many companies supported the young students. This allowed the brother to pay off his debts and continue with his projects. Even after achieving a dream for any young game lover, the kids continued to have fun. But that wasn't the end. Randomly, Kuroda suggests that everyone pitch ideas and create a game freely without worrying about deadlines taking their time. This bothers them because they like bossy Kuroda, who always wants things done under tight deadlines, believing that's when they work best and produce fascinating results. From that moment on, they promise to stay together forever and create the best game company. However, the protagonist still lacks a clear life goal. In this absurd world, there are moments when you're up, but you can come crashing down at any moment. For now, they'll continue with their projects on a path that leads who knows where. One thing they do know is that this beautiful friendship will live forever. They'll remember how a group of young people achieved the highest game sales and were sponsored by Sega itself. If you want more romantic and great friendship animes, comment romantic comedy, and I'll get to work.